Let's learn more about the greener ways of doing the business. Patra sir, welcome to you on behalf of everybody present in the meeting. Over to you.
Many thanks, Shruti, for the kind words, and my special thanks to Mr. Narayan and his team for giving me this opportunity to speak on the subject like sustainable procurement. Hi, friends. Good morning, everyone. And firstly, I want to wish you all a very happy new year. Now, I also want to welcome you to this webinar on sustainable procurement and circularity. You may call it a circular economy, circular procurement. I've made it a short one called circularity. When we talk of the term sustainability, let's understand the term sustainability. In a normal sense, when we say sustainability means we are able to sustain ourselves. When we talk of personal basis, whether our expenses, whether our life, we always ask each one, are you able to sustain with this type? That's the sustainability. But when we use the word sustainability for the business world has different story, because the business world means we're talking of production. Production means more natural resources, more physical resources. And whatever we do for the production, we create environmental factors. All activities relate to environmental issues because we are using the resources. And those resources are creating the environmental impact around. So in short, when we say sustainable world, sustainable procurement or sustainable development, which was coined later on by the UN, they say, guys, we are consuming so much of energy, we are consuming so much of water, we are consuming so much of natural resources, and the planet is only one. If you look back in India, even when we took the independence in 47 versus now, today our emission is around 2.5 gigatons per year. And when we took it around, even if I go 30 years back, it was only 0.5. So each country's, particularly when we think of China, India, US, many countries around, the emission is too high, and that is affecting the climate change also. So people are getting thinking around, guys, we are creating so much of production, so much of consumption. What does it mean? So much pressure on the earth itself. So this one is leading that if we are consuming so much, are we leaving something for the future generation? If we talk of consuming ourselves, our generation will pass on, but are we leaving anything for the future generation to meet their needs around? If you go back, the way figures are coming around, 2030, the figures of the population would be around 9.2 billion. Today, we are touching around 7.8. And if you get into 9.2, you can imagine around whether the resources will be available of that size. So let me touch also what is my experience on this field, so to give you some confidence around. I was the first one to start in the UN, the subject like green procurement. It was in 1995. I was posted in Denmark, and Danish government paid us some funds that they wanted us to develop green procurement specifications. And that was my beginning of it. So when I was developing the green standards, and green standard means we were looking at the specs part. Today we talk of single star rating, 2-star rating. I was looking at the energy rating around like if you can say washing machines, computers, laptops. Similarly for the wood, we were looking around the wood is recyclable or not. Paper we were looking around. So we looked at many items around. And this was during Bill Clinton when he came around with the concept of green procurement. The UN took the lead also to develop the specs around. So I spent around 1 or 2 years on developing the specs for common user item. And we did in cooperation, not in isolation. We did in cooperation with European Commission. And then we used to have a newsletter. I still keep a copy with me. And then later on all of you know, there was a Rio conference, and then later was another conference in Japan. And I was there around. And there also I presented the subject on green procurement. The green means we were only looking at the environmental aspect. Later on, people said, okay, we are taking care of environment, but how about the social factors? Are we giving equal opportunity to everybody around? Are we discriminating them? Are we taking care of, we are not even encouraging child labor? So those factors were looked into around. So then social factor became very important. So when you add environment and social together, along with economic factor, the price part, which normally procurement, it becomes sustainable procurement. So let me again clarify, when we say green procurement means I'm looking only the price part, which you are all used to it. And then when I add the factor of environment, guys, whatever I'm making it, or whatever parts I'm buying from a supplier, let's say I'm your supplier, you have another supplier, my price may be X, others' price may be Y. But if you're comparing the price on a unit basis, then you're going with a very traditional approach. But if you say, guys, no, I want to see the price or the cost to me over the life cycle. You want to buy a generator, you want to buy a car, you want to buy a computer. I know everybody has everything has a life. But over a span of 3 years, one laptop consumes, let's say, 50 watts. Other consumes 30 watts, but the price may be higher. But over a span of 3 years of its life, maybe it works out to be economical. So that is what we used to come with the concept of green. And then if I add the subject of social parameters, the people who are producing it, I mean, we are not discriminating on the basis of race or color or something. We're giving equal opportunity to everybody around. We are not encouraging child labors. Then we are also taking care of whatever we make. We are taking care of the health of the people around. Some of the item may be very hazardous, which may affect the health of the people around. So if we combine the social parameters, we combine the environmental factors and economic factors, we talk of sustainable. There's another word which came around was sustainable development. I might be doing sustainable procurement, but then the UN was saying, guys, we want to develop sustainable development part. We want something, not that some countries are left behind. Some countries, even 36 in Africa itself, 36% people is below the poverty line. In India also is around quite a big number. So those countries, how do we take care out of the poverty? How do we improve the economic situation of them around? So then the word came of sustainable development part. So this is where I thought, let me clarify the terms around. Now another thing was, if we look back now, circularity part. If we look at the linear production, you get the requirement from the customers, you produce it, you consume it, and after consuming, you say, guys, now throw it away. Where does it go? The whole wastage is going into the land, or I'm trying to do incineration as well. So that is also mean the resources which are taken out from the Mother Earth, I use it, and then I just put back to the landfill. So that means those resources are not being used around. But circular economy means I'm trying to use the same resources back and back. Look back when I look at my childhood around, if suppose we are 3 brothers, one brother will buy the same dress and we will not throw it even if it becomes shorter. Younger brother will start using it. They used to be recycled, reuse. Same concept of, I think in India we have been doing in our life. So we use it. Then we say, guys, okay, no, life is over. Let me pass on to someone. It's reuse it. Then we recycle it. So that whole concept of circular economy, we try to bring into procurement. So that means procurement concept also become a circular procurement. I'll be explaining much more later on this one. So well, friend, with this, let me start what I plan to do around. What key takeaways are the concept of sustainable procurement. Everybody should understand what is green procurement, what is sustainable procurement. As people, those who are from technical background, they will very easily understand the green word. Then we'll talk about the principles and the core subjects around. Next is coming exploring the drivers of sustainable procurement. What are the drivers? What drives it, sustainable procurement? And then the very first time ISO came with a standard called 20,400. It covers it beautifully. One, I think in your office, you should have it, a copy of it. It covers beautiful guidelines how to implement sustainable procurement. Key sustainability impacts we'll talk around. Incorporating sustainability into procurement policy. You have the policies, you have the strategies. If you want to incorporate those ideas into your procurement, how do we incorporate? What changes need to be made around? Since I have gone through this, I'll let you know how we did around. Organizing the procurement functions towards sustainability. Practical issues when using sustainability criteria. And lastly, I will touch on the circular economy. But keep in mind, At the end of the day, when we talk of resources, we say consumption, we talk of production. Production means procurement. At the end of the day, more the production, more the procurement. And more production means more consumption also. So in short, if you look around, procurement is a cornerstone of this sustainable process. If you're talking of sustainable, this is the cornerstone because major money is going here. Any company you think around 60 to 70% is going into procurement. When I went down to Apple a few days back, there everything is going into this procurement. Basically, they call supply chain because procurement is a major chunk of it, but still everything is going into that. Salaries component, maybe salary component, profit, if I look around, is 20%. 80% is going into this. So procurement is the one which drives consumption. Procurement is the one which drives the production. So this is what we are going to talk about. So let me again start on the subject of sustainability. Sustainability means meeting our own needs without compromising the ability of the future generation. We may have your own, like I have my grandkids around. So if I look at their state and if we start consuming everything from the earth, the water is depleting already, we know. So if we think of even the air is getting more and more polluted around, so what are we leaving for them? In addition to natural resources, we also need social and economic resources. So certainly we look at the natural resources. We also need social factors, economic factor, and sustainability is not just environment. So keep in mind, if we would have talked about the green, I would have gone with the environment. The moment I say sustainability, I'm talking of many other parameters. Explanation, if I want to just go further, all life on the earth depends on the environment. All natural resources that come from the environment include food, water, plants, and minerals. So the water we are seeing all the time in India also, and plants. So we are looking at the depletion of water. Minerals also, many are getting depleted. So how many years this will go on if we go with the same rate of consumption until we go into the circular economy? Sustainability is the idea that human must interact with the environment in a way that ensures that there will be enough resources left for the future generation. So we want to leave something for our coming generation. I know some people want to leave the money, but money can't do anything if resources are not there. So that's what we need to do around. This gives you some idea about the growth which is happening around. Growth increased by this one 2050. If you look around, the growth is around 317%. On the GDP side, population wise 41%. But the demand increase, if you look around, is already going up by 53%. On the food side, 56% on the energy side, and 234% on water side. So you can imagine around, this is where the stress is going to come around. And the population, where they are projecting around by 2050 will be 9.7 billion, which will expect the parameters I've told you around the requirement of food. Food-wise, we are reasonably okay. As per the data available from FAO, food is sufficient enough available for 10 billion people. Even now we make more than that, but there's a lot of wastage also. The wastage of the all food produced around is around 1 trillion worth. If you look at the worthwhile, India's food wastage is around 20%. Some maybe because we don't have a proper cold chain around. Or we may have, again, distribution losses around. Storage is not there around. So those could be affecting a big way. In America, it is around 5%. In India, being a poor country, where we are not able to feed every mouth, still we have 20% wastage around. So those wastage need to be cut down. The pillars of sustainability. Normally, I would say there are three pillars. People talk of social, economic, environmental. Here, I tried to put human angle a little extra with more focus on child and other commonality parts. Social could be that we are ethicals and corruption free. All those factors are there around. In principle, if you look around most of the places around, they talk of only three parameters. They combine social and human, but some people in the European Commission, they take human as separate. Now we talk of those three parameters, let's say environment, society, and economy. Those are the Venn diagrams. So the one where all are joining together, that is what we call, if you can say, the sustainable part. But now the question comes, if I'm a businessman, my all parameters are important. I'm not saying that. The very first parameter which comes up is environmental part. So environmental is the most important thing around that. Mean if I'm able to have resources or not. I'm having a production. It can work for 10 years, but after 10 years, I may not get the resources. I may not get the raw materials. So in that situation, people say, guys, no, the focus has to be on environment. And environment is the one which is affecting the whole climate effect also. So some people are calling environment should be the key factors around society, yes, and last is economy around. But if you ask a businessman, they will say, guys, I need the money to survive. If I'm not able to make money, other parameters come. But this is where we have chicken egg stories around. So what is sustainable procurement? So when we talk of sustainable procurement, the very first parameter is identifying suppliers. So from wherever we buy, every company spends whatever. If I take of pharma companies in India, we spend around 50% of our revenue goes into procurement. If we talk of manufacturing, even like Maruti's and others, they spend 70% of the revenue goes into procurement. So that means all that procurement, if I'm finding from suppliers, I should have a checklist. How do I select the suppliers? I know it's not going to happen overnight, but we need to develop some guidelines so that when we shortlist supplier X versus Y, there should be a requirement, guys, I need this thing. The item which they're using around, are they recyclable? Are they made from recycled materials? So that's what we need. Are they hazardous materials? Can we think of some other substitutes around? So those checklists has to be part of it around. Using production materials that have sourced responsibly. That means whatever we are doing it, let's say paper. I can buy the paper, then I can throw it. Or I can recycle it. So that means sourcing has to be done responsibly. I know this is the concept I worked very first one in 1995. I had a problem around. So in the UN, we said, guys, okay, we are going to have a recycle 100%. Then when we went for the total recycle one, we found the printers were getting jammed. Then we said, guys, no, we need to make a change. Many companies said, guys, we can't do experiments around, but maybe in the UN we could do that. So then later on we said, guys, we'll have 50% virgin paper and 50% recycled. Combined, the two components were changed around. So it was not 100%. But in some countries it's easier, because in Denmark was when I was there, the source from where we make the paper, so they are recycled again. I mean, I use it here and then they grow another plants around. So there was no shortage of the trees around. So in the process, whatever trees I chop it off, that many trees are again planted around. So there was a cyclability in that sense around. Reducing waste by reusing packing material. The packing material is the biggest wastage. Now, presently I'm in the US, now I can see around, and I've worked for 25 years in the US. Packing is the biggest wastage I can see. Even in India also, if I look around the cities and if you compare with the villages, cities also have got a lot of packing materials around. Do we really need a packing material? So when I was talking to the companies in Apple, in the past, Apple used to give you Apple phone along with charger. Now they think everybody has a charger. The moment I put a charger, the packing size becomes bigger by 10%. So I can cut the cost of packing by 10% by removing the charger. If somebody needs, they can buy. Why include for everybody? So this is where we need to look around, is how can we cut down the use of packing material? Can we make it recyclable around? So whatever item you guys are buying around, you could also think of saving in this direction. Maintaining healthy work environments. So this is the social parameter. So the social parameter is, guys, are we paying proper wages around? Employees feel respected around, they are given proper respect as well, and they're valued around. So they should feel a pride of working in the company. So they should not be slaved around. So that's what we're looking around, healthy work Now coming at the benefits of the sustainable procurement. So when we think of implementing sustainable procurement, let's say, because the next generation I see even here also in the US, people are becoming conscious. When they go and buy, they promote organic buying, they promote anything which is recycled. Even the jeans which are available here, people love to buy recycled jeans around. So this mindset is changing. So that means it improves the reputation part. This company is taking care of the planet and they're cutting down the risk around. It decreases the cost around. That means if, let's say simple thing, sustainable procurement, I've got the lamps and fittings around, and this is what we did. I remember in 1995, earlier the lights were on all the time. Not that we could not afford to pay, but again, the energy is limited. Then we said, guys, okay, we'll come up and try to make some fitting in the rooms. So if nobody is there, no movement is there in the room, light will switch off. So that is the concept we brought around. We think of saving our energy bills. Similarly, we had, I remember the project we did along with UNICEF and we did together. So we said, okay, let's put down a limit of it. We could find that time in 1995, I'm talking going back very old way. We said, guys, there were many people who were eager on this. And particularly in those Scandinavian countries, I could find many people committed to this. He said, guys, let's Christian put down the targets for water. How much is our water consumption now? How much is our energy consumption? Then we try to review it on a yearly basis. Even the taps, if so we made it very clear, if they're leaking, get them fitted. So those concepts came around. It has to come into our system, you know. Now next thing come is revenue growth. If customers are willing to pay for sustainability for their future generations, then naturally there's revenue growth. Then come the future proofing part. So when I talk of future proofing is against potential shortage in supply. Can we sustain supply for such a long time? I mean, if I go back the number of cars which were made maybe 3 years back and today, and then maybe for the next, today world makes around whatever 15 or million cars around, can we sustain that much? Because ultimately some input is coming from somewhere around. So that's what we're looking around future proofing as well. If I can recycle those cars, if I can recycle the materials, then yes, we can do the future proofing. Selection of suppliers, which I know as a procurement person, you all have gone through the proper training around how to select the supplier, how to negotiate around. So the very parameter we look around is economic consideration, the best value for money. But is it value for environment also? Because the value for money we're looking only, guys, is it worth it or not? The price I paid X, is it worth it or not? The word worth, if I incorporate environmental parameter, if I incorporate social parameter, then yes. Then we look around the price, quality, availability. This is normally what we look around presently, but in future, if you want to change, environmental considerations, eco-label concept came very popular those days. European Union came around. They had come with a big flower around, so there was eco-label. Then the Germany came with the Blue Angel. Norway came with their own. India has also come up with the eco-label, but it has not become, there's not associate a group working for it, to be honest. There we could find many companies came up around who will give you label after testing the product, how you make it. Suppose if I'm buying X, Y item, whether I'm buying a bucket, whether I'm buying any item for my home, even furniture, if I know this has got eco label, that means I can be very confident that this is environmentally taken care of. This company is not environmentally disturbing anything. And if I want to go with that label fully, then sustainable part, it is also taking, this company is taking care of social parameter also. So Government of India has come up, but still there's no law per se on this. Social considerations, effect on purchasing decision. Then poverty eradication, if you're going with sustainable development approach, that's the way we're looking around. So labor conditions, human rights. So those are the parameters, selection of the period. So economic aspect, environmental aspect, and social consideration. A combination of the three pillars will become sustainable procurement. If you're only considering environmental part, then it's a green procurement. Now, UN has come up with this global compact. Since you are the best #1 refinery in the world, I think personally, I mean, just maybe I'm jumping too fast on that. It's good to be connected with the UN Global Compact. That guys, you are part of it. You're following the guideline. I would say all the big companies, many of them, at least Europe is #1, I would call, around 5,000 companies in Europe, which are listed with UN Global Compact. Many Asian companies are there around. In America, around maybe 1,500 to 1,600. So when I say UN Global Compact, means you're following the 10 principles. And those 10 principles, if I can explain them, come under the 4 headings on the human rights, the labor side, environment, anti-corruption. So here are the ones which are there. On the human rights, it explains those 2 aspects around. On the labor side, environment and anti-corruption. So there are many companies who have signed with UN, so they can easily put a big logo. It's a good branding system also. You can tell the whole world that, guys, this company is listed with the UN Global Compact. That means we follow all the 10 principles to make us the best in the world in terms of society, in terms of environment, in terms of human rights, and in terms of ethics also. Anti-corruption means, again, ethics factor also comes up there. Integrity also comes in there. So then there are standards for each one of them. So if you look at each aspect around, I'll just focus on sustainable procurement. The standard which has been developed is called ISO 20400. I think this is the first time which was developed around for this. Now, UN has got its own development goals behind all this sustainable development word. They don't call sustainable procurement. I mean, obviously, it's a part of it. Their objective is sustainable development. That means we want the world to prosper. It is not the few countries prospering around. We want the world to prosper around. Coming back to ISO 20400, very first international standards on sustainable procurement, which again I will advise everybody should have it. It's a beautiful document prepared. Now, what is this? An ISO guidance on SP. SP means sustainable procurement. It's a flexible framework, provides an understanding of what is sustainable procurement, how sustainability impacts the different levels of procurement in terms of policy, in terms of strategy, in terms of organization, in terms of processes, and how to implement SP practically. And this is not easy, let me tell you frankly, because we have gone through it. It obviously, when I look for a budget in those days, we have to justify then why we are going for it. Is it going to be useful or not? So we had many changes back and forth, but finally we succeeded in a few areas. Applies to any organizations, regardless of its sector, size, location. Somebody should not think this is only for the big companies. No. Everybody has to take care of the future generation, so it affects everybody around. Any stakeholders involved in are impacted by procurement. Anyone who's doing procurement decisions. You are the one who has a big purse in your pocket because you are the one who spent the biggest money on behalf of the company. So that means it affects a lot. It does not replace legislation, policy, and ethical framework that regulate procurement. You have your legislation, we are not changing that, but they are changing the processes of selection. If someone wants, I'll be very happy to share the guidelines which has been developed. So it's already advanced quite a lot. So the definition of, again, sustainable procurement as per the standard is, if you go with the standard, then this is the one that has the most positive environmental, social, and economic impact possible over the entire life cycle. The word is their entire life cycle, not the today's price. If I'm buying a generator at today's price, fine. But if my generator has a life of 5 years or 10 years, I'll say over the entire 10 years, then I would say, guys, how much is it going to cost me? Including the operation cost, maintenance cost, the training cost, and lastly, disposal cost. So I have to look at the total cost around. I think this change can be done on a relatively easier. The benefits, I think I've touched it, so I can skip this one again. So this book covers the scope part, the normative references are there, terms and conditions are there, understanding of fundamentals, integrating sustainability into the organization procurement policy and strategies, organizing the procurement functions, and lastly, integrating sustainability into procurement process. I'll explain you later because Government of India has done in one area, sir. It's called Government Electronic Market, GEM. And this unit of the government works on a self-sustaining basis. This is basically replacing DGS&D. Those of you who know DGS&D, many of my batchmates those days joined it, and suddenly it was said, guys, this is not going to work. Replace it with a new model, and I can explain you. They have incorporated a lot of this around. Then comes sustainable procurement indicators. When we talk of sustainable procurement, what are the indicators? How do I check? Prevention of pollution, that's the key thing. Sustainable resource use, eco-label or equivalent. Climate change emissions. Now, climate change emission, if you look around, obviously, as I said to you, the figure of India is 2.5 gigatons. China is 4 times than us, around 10 gigatons. America is around 5.6 gigatons. So we come around third numbers around. Then come Japan, Germany, all of them are also very high. If I look as a per capita basis, per person basis, our population is very high. Then we go at the lowest. But if you look at the country as a whole, yes, we are number 3. But sometimes we take the benefit, guys. Okay, if you add the number of, divide by the number of population, then our emission per person is very low. So now comes the, this one is emission. If I say around the India, if I say natural gases, greenhouse gases around, the greenhouse gas could be the carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, sulfur oxide, all these gases. Some of them are also emitted in your plant also. So those gases also affects, because if emission, if they put the carbon footprints, so 10% come from, I would say, energy sector. Of the India, if I talk around the total, 10% come from energy sector. Energy does not mean only yours area, the coal is a one. Then comes other energy sectors around where your plant also comes in. So those are the one, I think this is where we need, particularly the one if it's a petroleum ones. The way it is produced, the way it is manufactured, the technology which was, some people, if they have old technology versus the new technology, you can see a big change around. So this is where one could look into the emission part around, how much we can contribute or cut down the emissions to help the country from the climate change. Protection of biodiversity. This is also very important around. I might be growing same plants again and again, but there's no biodiversity. So that biodiversity is also important around. Habitat also we need to protect around. Human rights, labor issues, inclusion of person with disability. We should not say, okay, guys, this is disabled, but the person is able to do everything, but he's only on the foot side, he has got disability, but he can work like a normal person. Why not? Whole life cycle cost. So don't look at the unit cost, look at the life cycle cost. Then we take the gender issues, social well-being, local communities and SMEs, and training SMEs, promoting sustainability to supply chain. Its supply chain is not ending at tier 1. Supply chain goes to tier 2 also. Your supplier may be going okay, but the supplier is buying from tier 2 supplier. They may not be sustainable. So it's a whole chain to be worked around. Generic additional indicator, which I said to you, joining UN Global Compact around. I think this is, to me, the way I look around is very important around. The big companies should take the lead. Since I was the chairman of the UN supply chain, so I would say, if this is a great thing around, it improves your profile, it improves the branding worldwide. So those who are big companies, they could plan it. I think that will set the tone automatically then. So this one is basically shows you where some, if you look around the spend part, every company may be spending 30%, 40% internal. But supply chain, where procurement is a major chunk, 60% to 70%. So this is where we need sustainability objective can be fully achieved. They can't be achieved without the supply chain or procurement, I would say, because if I take the supply chain, where's the money going? Either in logistics or procurement. So this is where we need to look around. Internal spend takes care of operations. So I'm looking at this one. So this is where we need to look at that. If you look at the stakeholder, the people who are inside, who make the decisions, who are the budget holders, for whom you procure, key functions. So those are my stakeholders. And ISO 20600 gives the definitions on that. Supply chain is on the other side. So procurement is in the center of it. Major chunk is spent by procurement. So procurement is a key mechanism to achieve sustainability objective. So whenever we want to think of any sustainability, I have to focus more on the procurement side than on other issues as well. But this gives you the bigger framework, the roadmap, how to deal with the stakeholders, how to take care of supply chain, and then focus on procurement. This book gives you in a very graphical form, very nicely one, I would say. Sustainability environments, diversity, ethical resources, procurements. So this woman is taking care of the procurement, sourcing, buyers, purchasing. So there's a big discussion all the time. These people say we want this, procurement has to think of savings. So they have to struggle to work together. So stakeholders are one side, other side is procurement. Stakeholders also could be sometimes problem. If procurement say, I want to promote greening, but these people say, I don't have budget. My budget is limited. So that could affect sometime. Sustainable procurement is good for business. 90%, obviously, this was based on the data which was collected by some survey. It improved the brand reputation. 70% develop stronger and more reliable, long-lasting supplier relationship. Because if I'm getting into recycling, I'm going into reuse, I'm making a long-term relationship with the supplier. Guys, okay, after the life of 5 years, will you take my computers back? Will you take my car back? And then supplier gives me the money and then they reuse it, or re-improve it, redesign it, or send it further. So it becomes a long-term relationship. Here also I find in the US, there are some big companies, they can take back your old cars and then they will, assuming the life is still left over, then they will change the parts, they'll do that and then sell them again, service cars around. Then 50% have more innovative, sustainable products and services that results in increased sales. Improved ranking in green financial indexes. So if somebody wants to see your green financial indices, it helps you to improve. And lastly, cost saving as well. If item is energy efficient, you are certainly making up this one. But there are other issues as well on social responsibility. Then we are looking at communities' involvements and developments, consumer issues, fair separating practices, the environment part, labor practices, human rights. So they are the one parameters I've taken from ISO 26000, which could become part of my governance part. Now coming back to the meat for procurement, scope, normative reference, then fundamentals. So this gives you the graphical things when I talk of fundamentals, managing the risk part, due diligence certainly required around, setting the priorities, avoiding the complicity around, and the last is exercising influence around. So this gives you a broad framework to plan, to source and manage. How do I plan it? Then sourcing part and managing part. The benefit of 20,400 is that it gives you practical framework. You know, whenever you make the policy guideline, the very first question comes, what are the framework? So we draw the break framework. I remember one program we were doing for one company to implement category management. The very first thing is everybody wants to understand what is the framework. Then we implement it. Similarly, strategic sourcing, what is the framework? Tactical procurement, there's a framework. So this is where we come around. Protect your reputation by efficiently managing sustainability. Get ahead of future clients' regulatory requirements. So I know everybody is worried about if the regulations are put, then we worry. If tomorrow government says that this is a must, then everybody will do it. But then somebody has to get ahead. Take a competitive advantage in your industry by seizing opportunity. Demonstrate supply chain engagements. So there are different standards available which can be helped around. The impact when I look around environmental impacts, the waste and disposal. The waste is the biggest issue. So waste means if I'm trying to send my old computers, old laptop, old furnitures, old sofas, old materials, old components, should they go into the earth? Should they be recycled? I think that's the way we need to come with the guidelines around. Then improved efficiencies for using finite or scarce resources. So we all know there are finite resources, and those resources are going to deplete. Like even for the oil, crude oil, people say, guys, available is another 40, 50 years maximum. But then what happened after 50 years? Either we have to come with a new technology. I know we are focusing on wind, we are focusing on solar. So this is where we have to come up at the earliest stage around. Similarly, when it comes to water and other raw material as well. Protecting the biodiversity. That is very important around. Sometimes if I've got 7 or 8 crops, but then I only focus on one crop because that gives me more return. So if you don't do a biodiversity, then obviously I'm using more resources. I'm depleting more on the water side, using more energy, but the outcome may not be that much good. Then there are sometimes carbon dioxide, all this, what you call the gases around, carbon dioxide, methane, and other gases impacting the climate change around. Environmental impacts, the noise is also environmental impact, water, and ground pollutions around. So this is where we are looking around is management, operation, and technical controls to minimize the release of harmful emissions into the environment. That could be another one. Now the strategy, what it requires, I'm again taking from the standard itself, incorporating the sustainability criteria in the organized purchasing evaluation. That means if I'm coming with, this is a very straightforward, I would call it around. If you are able to develop some, for each item, some specifications, which you feel that this needs to be, this has got some impact on the environment, and the specs can be changed around, those criteria, if you can come up with a checklist, this is what I call the green procurement, the developing monitoring and mechanism to promote vendor compliance. So that means if I can give a weightage to those suppliers who are environmental friendly, overnight I cannot drop it off. Okay, everybody has to be environmental friendly, but I could give weightage to them, guys. I'll give 50% marks to the environment. Price, I could give another 50%, then I could come with a pair. Stimulating innovation through crowdsourcing. This is another concept I think we used also long back. Initially, we thought, who will be doing this? Then we said, guys, okay, we are looking for, this is the item we buy. We buy, in that time, I remember the UN as a family of $15 billion procurement. We were buying around 30,000 type of item, goods and services. And then we knew out of the 30,000, 3,000 are the very high value item. We said, guys, this is the item we buy. Now, our knowledge about people who can provide us environmental friendly were not much. So we said, guys, those who can provide us environmental friendly, whose specs are much better, we collected RFI bases, then we, based on their knowledge, we learned ourselves and designed our specs around. So we did the crowdsourcing. I think this is a great thing. With the crowdsourcing, mean we ask the people and get all the information. Functional specs and piloting other innovative technology. Better integrations of procurement at the project design stage itself. So when I'm designing a project, this is what I'm going to do. I'm making a building. At that stage, this could be integrated. Because design of a building means design of the roads, design of the plant, turnkey plants. So we know this is what I'm going to buy. So at that stage, we could design what type of item I'm buying, how I could revise it, how specs could be changed, how could I cut down my emissions. So promoting and utilizing public-private partnership, enhancing already high transparency standards. Then comes the next one is, this is again, somebody did a study around, again we have the headquarters, one group around, they did the study. Sustainable procurement parameters in 2021. People said, guys, COVID-19 has affected that we can't do all this thing around. COVID-19 pandemic has consolidated corporate sustainability goal. If you look from the energies consumption wise, other consumption wise, I think we've done better. Economy wise might have been affected, but on these parameters, on the sustainability wise, some companies have done better last year, I would call. So the feedback which came around, I can show you that. So this one shows you the answer which came from the people around, those who are really leader type. We take sustainability performance into consideration when selecting new suppliers. So 74% said yes. I know 90% of the feedback which came was from Europe and US. The next answer was, we include sustainability criteria in all our RFP, RFX tenders. So in all RFP, RFX, all the bidding process, we take care of. 63% said yes. 37% who are non-leaders type, they were the ones. We look at sustainability performance when implementing preventive, 59%. Sustainability performance is addressed in our SRM. So when we are getting into supplier relationship management, we also talk of sustainability performance. It is not the supplier performance alone. Normally what we do around performance, when we look at the price, we look at the delivery, we look at the quantity, we look at the performance, but sustainability performance, 70%. Then we include sustainability criteria in shortlisting, and we discontinue cooperation supplier that fail to improve it. So 56% said around. So that shows the trend is changing. And this survey was done only last year. The tools what they're using around to support sustainable development. The very first one, the tools which came around was category country risk evaluation model. There are risks, certainly. So what risk, how they are evaluating it around. Supplier self-assessment tools they are developed around. If we want, I've got suppliers, and instead of me going and checking with them, I'll send them the questionnaire, guys, can you do it for us? Then the guidelines for the buyers on best practices per commodity basis. Supplier audit program for someone which you are buying in a bulk way, you could do audit part. Total cost model, I think this is the one, could be the very first beginning, the way I can see in India. This could be the very first step around in terms of model. Total cost models, including sustainable development criteria. That means we are really using life cycle costing, total cost of ownership. Third part is supplier sustainability database, including rating and scorecards, supplier training programs. Supplier need to be trained on this. Why we are asking for this? And then there are different standards which need to be explained. Some standards are for sports goods, some items are for pharma items, some are for medical items around. So different items, there are different standards around. Coming back to the oil and gas, capital cost, reduce cost and optimize the performance. So there is a big need for that around. Supply chain visibility part. So if you look end-to-end supply chain, to manage the risk and cost control, we need to look around. Stringent standards have been developed now. Talent shortages there. Volatile prices, environmental footprint. So additionally, there are sometimes negative perception because we think, oh, we are dealing with gases, we are dealing with this. But that is, I think, what we need to change around. We're coming with some new ideas, improving the footprints, cutting down the carbon footprints, and coming with the handprints around. Carbon footprints is the negative thing. The positive side is a handprint. That means we are coming with new ideas how to do it. So that, I think, will help us to improve the image of this sector. Now, sustainability aspects in oil and gas sectors. Which are the one which your company measures around? Again, this was done with all the oil companies in Texas. Presently, I'm in Texas now. So this is the way they collected the data around. Waste management was the number one. So all the oil companies here, they said, guys, our focus is on waste management. Second is community contribution. The community also has to support it. Oil spill reduction. You know very well, since you also getting crude oil. So oil spill reduction, there are a lot of guidelines, a lot of legislation. So that is the another one they try to focus. Social investment, society training and skill development, source of materials, gas flaring reduction. I think this is another area which one could do it around by change of technology. Reduction of air pollution, transportation. If your company is providing a transportation, then that one also could be by having either CNG gas or something. So we could cut down the pollution level, carbon footprint reduction, and others around. So this is the key points which were talked about oil and gas for many companies, and they came with the feedback, and you can see the percentage response. Coming back to the next one now, circular economy. It looks like a circle. And one is called linear economy. I think which we are all used to it by now. We get the materials, raw materials, we get the components from supplier, we make them, and then we dispose them, throw them off, and ultimately they go into the landfill. So those which are going into the landfill creates troubles around. I can give you an example from my personal experience around. There was, the long back, there was a lot of disputes going on in Somalia and all those things around. And many people moved from there as migrated people to Kenyans. Many were killed. And then we were trying to find how do we take care of those people who have been killed. So we took PVC packs around, put the bodies, and then they were put into the earth. And that even after 10 years, 15 years, nothing happened. That means they were not biodegradable plastic. So that means that area of the land was totally destroyed. And we learned after the bad experience around, guys, we should not use PVC, we should use something else to wrap the body, dead bodies, so that the land becomes more fertile. So this linear economy, when we take around, it is basically doing more production, more consumption. More consumption means the example one I told you of this one. So that means they are not at all look from the environmental aspects around. So that means we have to deplete more. If today I'm making 10 to 15 million cars, and all of them are not even recycled, reused, then again next year I need another raw material for the 10 to 15 million vehicles around. So that means I'm going to deplete the world with the resources. So will our current method of consumption sustain the planet in the near future? That's a key question. So then the circular economy concept is, guys, you make it and then use it and return. And return back to the same supplier. The model has to be built up then. Some countries have done, Netherlands has done in few areas. And then there are others also who have done this. So this is what we call the circular economy. Now, circular economy is again forged further. So there are three parts: consumption and use. So use this one around. The next one is recycling and reuse. And the last is manufacturing. So we are focusing on, which Mr. Narayan said in the beginning. So we reuse it, you produce it, use it, reuse it, recycle it. And after recycling, we can remanufacture also with that item around. Circular economy and circular procurement. So based on the circular economy, can we have a circular procurement? That means the procurement has to focus on circular aspects around the item. Now the traditional procurement cycle, let's look at the traditional procurement cycle. What type of traditional procurement cycle we have? So the traditional procurement cycle is that agency defines the specs and requirements. The next one is I float the tender. The specs around me say RFQ, RFP, whatever. You guys are doing request for quotation, request for this. I'm using the word tender because public sector is much more involved in this. But technically, your case, you're sending the bidding documents. And the bids are received, technical evaluations. And lastly, we do the evaluation based on the cost. Selection is based on the initial cost. We are not looking at the total cost. Now look at the sustainable procurement framework. In a sustainable procurement framework, I'm looking at the process in a very cyclic way, not a straight line. Identification of needs. The very first question come in this one is, do I really need it? Can I cut down? Let's say my office says, guys, we want to buy, I remember we used to buy every year around more than 100, you can say the printers. Then later on we say, do we really need it? In the beginning, the culture was everybody wants to have printer next to his machine. Then we say, guys, no. We'll put down one printer in one office. Connect all the laptops, computers by Wi-Fi. So we cut down the needs part. Then we looked around the copy printers, photocopy printers. Then we say, guys, why should we buy it? Let's lease it. So I save my capital. Then I get something which someone ensures maintenance of it also. Then comes the next is definition of specs around. Can I look at the specs? First thing I'll look around the energy consumption, the materials which are used to make it around. Can I change them up? Is any hazardous material being used around? So those are the one specs to look at it. Then I look around the selection of the bidding companies. The company which are bidding, are they following these guidelines? You might be seeing here the term called GEM. This one I have taken from Government Electronic Market. And they are the one shortlisting it and they follow this guideline. When government can do it, I'm sure the private sector can easily do it around. Award of contracts, evaluation criteria, contract performance. So when the performance is looked around, additional green clauses have been considered here. So we look from that angle, and the last is managing and monitoring. So this is going in a circular way. Now, if I go with the TCO philosophy, you have the acquisition price. Today, I would say most of the company go with this. Can we look at the operating cost? I know it will be difficult if you don't have a data, and if you depend on supplier to begin with, nothing wrong. Then the next is the maintenance and repair cost. And last is end of the life cycle. What is the disposal price of this? If you combine the 4 parameters, then you can say this is worth it. So presently, I know we are looking at the initial price, but this is the way to go if you want to protect the environment around. So this is again circular economy framework. Under the needs, what to do it. Under the tendering part, go to market, evaluation, selection. So there are many parameters. In short, the focus is, I would call it, this is where the European Commission has done around reduce, reuse, recycle, recover. So now they're trying to divide another model they're trying to talk around, and this has been also implemented in few countries in Europe at a system level, at a supplier level, and at a product level. So this is where system level means I make it product and service systems, then supplier take back. That means if my life of the product is over, supplier will take over. So that means my relationship is not one time, it's a longer relationship. So supplier level, the supplier take back system is there, designed to disassembly. And at the product level, the designs are also changed accordingly. Recyclable materials and those things around. Recycled materials, total cost of ownership, that's what they look around. So this is the one I won't say still fully successful. It's going on. Few countries, small countries like Netherlands and this, they've done it. So the advantage is people say if you go with the circular economy, the carbon dioxide emission will go by literally half by 2030 if that model is followed around. The final thoughts, my friends, in this day and age of, I would say, particularly when we see the climate effects around, we see the future generation worries around them, pollution we look around, particularly those who are in Delhi, I know because since I'm from Delhi, I can see the pollution level. Have to look to being environmentally friendly in all aspects of our business. To implement sustainable practices, there need to be a payoff in terms of cutting costs, increasing revenue. The very first line says get good to become friendly, but then on the business side, because they also have to survive. So one has to look around on the paper that are we able to pay off in terms of cutting costs? Does it increase my revenue? Does it improve my branding? Does it improve my image? Then yes, it's worth it. If my branding goes up, my sale goes up, I can spend some money on this aspect. So work out why it would benefit you to become more sustainable and cut down the waste. Work out the existing footprints, what we have, and how to minimize it. So this all activities could be done with a team of people around. You could have a sustainable procurement team around that could take care of this. Do work out handprints also. Sometimes we get worried around the footprints are everywhere, let's be honest. Even when I walk, I'm also creating a footprint. I'm, let's say I'm growing cotton, there's a carbon footprints because cotton means it's going to take a lot of water. But then the question is, what are the positive side of it around? So one has to do the balancing of the two. That's what I would say. Well, with this, I want to thank you again for all this. And